The red sun of Veltar cast long shadows across the burning city below. Captain Li Huan stood on the bridge of the massive warship Tyrant's Claw, watching the destruction with cold satisfaction. Smoke rose from 1,000 fires as his soldiers moved through the streets like a plague of death. "Status report," Li Huan commanded, his reptilian voice echoing through the bridge. His scaled skin gleamed under the harsh lights, and his yellow eyes never blinked as he studied the tactical displays. "Sir, resistance has collapsed in all major cities," reported his second-in-command. "The Veltari military surrendered 3 hours ago. We estimate 12 million survivors ready for processing." Li Huan nodded slowly. 12 million new slaves for the mining colonies. The Draktar Empire would be pleased. For 300 years his people had conquered world after world, and the pattern never changed. First came the overwhelming attack from space, then ground forces landed to crush any remaining resistance. Finally, the survivors were sorted into useful slaves and useless mouths to feed. The Veltari had been no different from the dozens of other species the Draktar had conquered. They were a peaceful people who built beautiful cities and created wonderful art. They had no real weapons, no strong military, and no understanding of true warfare. Like all the others, they had begged for mercy when the Draktar fleet arrived in their system. "Bring me the leader," Li Huan ordered. Minutes later, 2 Draktar soldiers dragged a blue-skinned Veltari onto the bridge. The alien was old, with silver markings around his large eyes that spoke of wisdom and age. His clothes were torn and bloody, but he still held his head high with dignity. "I am Elder Ko Minho," the Veltari said in accented but clear galactic standard. "I speak for my people." Li Huan stepped closer, towering over the smaller alien. "Your people no longer exist. They are now property of the Draktar Empire. You will watch as we load them onto transport ships. You will see their faces as they realize their world is lost forever. Then you will die, and we will broadcast your death to every world in this sector." Elder Minho's large eyes showed no fear, only sadness. "Why do you do this? We never threatened you. We never attacked your people. We offered to trade with you, to share our knowledge freely." "Because we can," Li Huan replied simply. "Because the strong take what they want from the weak. Because the galaxy belongs to those with the power to claim it." The old Veltari looked around the bridge, seeing the Draktar officers watching with cruel amusement. "One day someone will stop you. Someone will stand up to your evil and end it forever." Li Huan laughed, a harsh sound like breaking glass. "Look around you, old fool. We have conquered 47 star systems. We have enslaved entire species. Our fleets are the largest in the galaxy. Our weapons can crack planets open like eggs. Who could possibly stand against us?" "I do not know," Elder Minho admitted. "But I have faith that somewhere in this vast galaxy, there are people with the courage to fight you. People who will not bow down or give up. People who will make you pay for every life you have taken." The Draktar captain struck the elder across the face with the back of his clawed hand. The old Veltari fell to the deck, blue blood flowing from his wounds. "Take him to the surface. Execute him in the main square where the others can see. Make sure the cameras capture everything." As the soldiers dragged Elder Minho away, Li Huan turned back to the view screen. Below, massive transport ships were landing in the ruined cities. Soon they would be filled with Veltari slaves bound for the mining worlds. The pattern would continue as it always had. Far across the galaxy, aboard the human colony ship New Sol, Commander Park Gina stared at the emergency message display with growing horror. Report after report flowed in from the outer systems. The Veltari homeworld had fallen. The Ketani colonies were under attack. The peaceful Zephyrians had sent their last transmission 6 hours ago before their communications went dark. "How many does that make?" asked her tactical officer, Lieutenant Han Mi. 14 systems in the last month," Gina replied grimly. "All conquered by the same enemy, the Draktar Empire." Lieutenant Han pulled up the intelligence files they had gathered. According to refugee reports, they have a massive fleet. Ships the size of cities armed with weapons we cannot even understand. They do not negotiate. They do not show mercy. They attack without warning and enslave every survivor. Commander Park studied the star charts, tracing the path of Draktar conquests. Each red mark represented a dead civilization, millions of beings killed or enslaved, and the pattern was clear. The Draktar were moving steadily toward human space. "What does Earth Command say?" she asked. "Admiral Choi Yebin has called an emergency session of the Defense Council." "But Commander..." Han hesitated. "The refugees all say the same thing. No one has ever successfully fought the Draktar. No military force has even slowed them down. They are too strong, too advanced." Gina nodded slowly. She had read the same reports. The Draktar used technology that seemed almost magical. Their ships could absorb massive amounts of damage without being destroyed. Their weapons could turn entire armies to ash in seconds, and their numbers seemed endless. "Keep monitoring all frequencies," she ordered. "If any more refugees make it out, I want to hear their stories. We need to learn everything we can about these Draktar." On the other side of the galaxy, the Galactic Council was meeting in emergency session. Representatives from dozens of species filled the Great Chamber, but instead of the usual diplomatic discussions, there was only fear and confusion. Ambassador Yoon Do-hyun represented the Human Federation. He watched as delegate after delegate stood to report the fall of their homeworlds. The Veltari seat was empty now. Elder Minho was dead, his people scattered to slavery across the Draktar Empire. "The situation is hopeless," declared the Ketani representative, her feathered crest drooping with despair. "We have lost contact with half our colonies. Our defense fleets were destroyed without even damaging a single Draktar ship." The massive form of the crystalline ambassador shifted, creating musical tones as his crystal body moved. "Perhaps we should consider surrender. If we offer to submit peacefully, they might show mercy." "There is no mercy with the Draktar," interrupted a new voice. A scarred refugee from the Zephyrian system had somehow gained access to the chamber. "I watched them execute children for sport. I saw them burn hospitals full of wounded soldiers. They do not want submission. They want slaves and entertainment." Ambassador Yoon stood slowly. "Then we must fight, all of us together. Pool our resources, combine our fleets and meet them with everything we have." "With what?" demanded the Ketani delegate. The Veltari had the most advanced shield technology in this sector, and it was useless against Draktar weapons. The Zephyrians had particle beam arrays that could cut through asteroids, and the Draktar ships absorbed the energy like it was sunlight. "We cannot simply give up," Yoon insisted. "There must be something we can do." The chamber fell silent. Outside the great windows, the lights of New Geneva Station twinkled peacefully, but everyone knew that peace would not last much longer. The Draktar were coming, and no one knew how to stop them. Back aboard the Tyrant's Claw, Admiral Vexrath materialized on the bridge as a hologram. The massive Draktar leader was even larger than Li Huan, covered in battle scars and wearing the golden armor of Supreme Command. "Captain Li," the Admiral's voice boomed through the speakers. "The Emperor is pleased with your conquest of the Veltari system. The slave yields are above projections." "Thank you, Admiral." The Veltari were weak, as expected. Their technology was interesting but ultimately useless against our superiority. "Indeed. I have new orders for you, Captain. Our scouts have identified our next target, a species that calls itself humanity. They have several dozen systems on the far edge of this spiral arm." Li Huan called up the intelligence reports on his command screen. The humans appeared to be a young species, having achieved interstellar travel only a few centuries ago. Their ships were primitive, their weapons basic, and their military organization seemed almost quaint compared to the Draktar war machine. "They appeared to be even weaker than the Veltari," he observed. "Perhaps," Admiral Vexrath agreed. "But our spies report that they are attempting to organize some kind of alliance against us. They think their combined fleets might pose a threat to the Empire." Both Draktar leaders laughed at the absurdity of the idea. "How long shall I give them to consider surrender?" Li Huan asked. "No surrender will be offered. the Admiral replied. The Emperor has decided to make an example of these humans. We will broadcast their destruction across the galaxy so that other species understand the futility of resistance. Prepare your fleet for departure. In 1 week, we sail for human space. The hologram faded, leaving Li Huan alone with his thoughts. He looked out at the ruined Veltari homeworld below. Soon another world would burn, another species would fall, and the Draktar Empire would grow stronger still. He had no way of knowing that in a secret shipyard orbiting Earth's moon, human engineers were putting the finishing touches on something that would change the galaxy forever. He could not imagine that somewhere among the soft mammals he planned to enslave, there were minds capable of creating weapons that operated beyond Draktar understanding as. 3 months had passed since Captain Li Huan sent his message across the galaxy. Now his massive fleet hung in space near the human frontier world called Harmony Station. 67 Draktar warships formed a wall of death and metal that stretched for thousands of kilometers in every direction. Li Huan stood on his bridge watching the pathetic human defense force move into position. 12 human ships, none larger than a Draktar escort vessel, tried to form a battle line between the Draktar fleet and the space station behind them. It was like watching insects try to stop a landslide. Their largest ship has the energy signature of a light cruiser, reported his tactical officer. Primitive fusion reactors, basic plasma weapons, and armor that our main guns could penetrate with a single shot. How many humans are on that station? Li Huan asked. Approximately 50,000, including military personnel and civilians. Intelligence suggests this is their main defensive position for this sector. Li Huan nodded. 50,000 witnesses to watch humanity's first defeat. The recordings would be broadcast across human space, showing their people exactly what happened to those who defied the Draktar Empire. Signal the human commander, he ordered. Offer them one chance to surrender. The main screen flickered, and the face of a human appeared. Captain Kim Woo-jin looked young for a starship commander, with determined brown eyes and short black hair. He wore a simple blue uniform that seemed almost primitive compared to Draktar military gear. I am Captain Kim Woo-jin, of the Human Defense. Ship Defiant, state your business in human space. Li Huan smiled, showing rows of sharp teeth. I am Captain Li Huan of the Draktar Imperial Fleet. You will surrender your ships and station immediately. All humans will be processed for slave assignments. Resistance will result in the complete destruction of this system. Captain Kim's expression never changed. I have a counteroffer, Captain Li. Turn your ships around and leave human space. Immediately. If you refuse, we will defend our people with everything we have. You have 12 ships against 67, Li Huan pointed out. Your weapons cannot even scratch our shields. Your armor is like paper to our guns. Surrender now, and some of your people will live as slaves. Fight, and all of them will die. Then we choose to fight, Kim replied simply. All ships, this is Captain Kim. Engage the enemy, show them what humans are made of. The communication cut off and Li Huan laughed. Fools, begin the attack. Destroy their ships but leave the station intact. I want the survivors to see exactly what resistance accomplishes. The space battle that followed was swift and brutal. Draktar plasma cannons reached across the void like fingers of death, tearing through human ships as if they were made of tin foil. The humans fought back with desperate courage, launching missiles and firing their energy weapons, but nothing they had could penetrate Draktar shielding. One by one, the human ships died. The destroyer Courage exploded in a ball of fire when a plasma burst hit her reactor core. The frigate Liberty split in half under concentrated fire from 3 Draktar cruisers. The smaller escort ships lasted only seconds against the overwhelming firepower, but Captain Kim and his ship Defiant refused to give up. Even as his vessel took massive damage, even as hull breaches vented atmosphere into space, he kept fighting. His crew worked frantically to keep weapons and engines online while Draktar fire hammered their ship. Sir, we have lost main power, reported his engineering officer over the ship's intercom. Life support is failing. Hull integrity is down to 15%. What about the engines? Kim asked. We still have impulse power, but not for long. Kim looked at the tactical display. 11 human ships were gone. Only the Defiant remained, and she was dying fast. But ahead of them, the Draktar flagship sat like a mountain of metal and death, its shields glowing from absorbed human weapons fire. "All hands, this is the captain," Kim announced over the ship's communication system. "We cannot win this battle, but we can show these aliens that humans do not surrender. We can make them remember this day. Engineering, give me everything you have." Navigation set collision course for their flagship. The bridge crew looked at their captain with understanding. They all knew what he was planning. They all knew they were about to die. But not one of them objected. "It has been an honor serving with you all," Kim said quietly. The Defiant turned toward the massive Draktar flagship and accelerated. Her damaged engines screamed in protest, but she gathered speed as she headed straight for the enemy ship. Draktar gunners tried to destroy her before impact, but Kim's navigator made random course corrections that threw off their aim. At the last second, Captain Kim opened a channel to the Draktar flagship. "Captain Lee, this is Captain Kim. Remember this moment. Remember that humans chose death over slavery. And remember that one day, someone will make you pay for every life you have taken." The Defiant struck the tyrant's claw just below the main gun batteries. The human ship's reactor exploded on impact, sending a ball of nuclear fire across the Draktar vessel's hull. For a few seconds, the massive flagship shook under the explosion, and several of its weapons went offline. Then the fire faded, and the tyrant's claw continued on its course toward Harmony Station. The collision had damaged some systems, but the ship was still very much alive and dangerous. Li Huan picked himself up from the bridge floor where the impact had thrown him. "Damage report," he demanded. "Minor hull damage, sir. We lost 3 weapon mounts and some sensor arrays, nothing critical." "And the humans?" "All ships destroyed, sir. The station is defenseless." Li Huan nodded, but he felt strangely unsatisfied. The humans had died well, he had to admit. Few species showed such courage in the face of certain death. Most enemies surrendered when they realized defeat was inevitable. But these humans had fought to the very end, and Captain Kim's final ramming attack had actually surprised him. "Begin bombardment of the station," he ordered. "But use low-power shots. I want it to take several hours. Let them think about their situation." As Draktar guns began to pound Harmony Station, the surviving humans inside sent desperate messages toward Earth. The recordings of the battle went out on all frequencies, showing how the tiny human fleet had died fighting impossible odds. On Earth, those recordings reached the emergency session of the United Human Defense Council. General Choi Yeben stood before the assembled leaders, her face grim as she reviewed the tactical data from Harmony Station. "Ladies and gentlemen, the situation is clear," she announced. "Conventional warfare against the Draktar is impossible. Their technology is centuries ahead of ours. Their ships can absorb more damage than we can dish out, and their weapons can destroy our vessels with single shots." "Then what do you propose?" asked Admiral Song from the Pacific Fleet. "We cannot simply surrender our entire species to slavery." General Choi activated a holographic display that showed technical blueprints for a ship, unlike anything the Council had seen before. It was sleek and angular, covered in armor that seemed to shift and flow like liquid metal. "Project Indomitable," she announced. "For the past 10 years, our best scientists have been working on revolutionary technology, quantum phase shielding that can shift between dimensions, avoiding damage entirely, gravitational wave weapons that tear apart matter at the molecular level, and an AI tactical system that can process battle scenarios faster than any organic mind." Dr. Nam Hee-jin from the Advanced Weapons Division stepped forward. "The ship is powered by a contained microsingularity. This makes it incredibly dangerous to operate, but also gives it nearly unlimited energy for weapons and shields." "How dangerous?" asked Admiral Song. "If the containment fails, the singularity could destroy everything within several light years," Dr. Nam admitted. "The ship is essentially a flying bomb, but it is also our only hope of matching Draktar technology." The council chamber fell silent as the leaders absorbed this information. They were being asked to approve a weapon that could accidentally destroy Earth if something went wrong. "How many crew would this ship require?" asked General Park from the Marine Corps. 200 volunteers, General Choi replied. And that is exactly what they would have to be. Volunteers. No one can be ordered to serve on a ship this dangerous. I will go. The voice came from the back of the chamber. Commander Song Tai-ho stood up slowly, his dress uniform crisp and his bearing proud. He was a veteran of the border wars, one of the most decorated officers in the human fleet. Commander, you do not understand what you are volunteering for, General Choi said gently. This is almost certainly a suicide mission. I understand perfectly, General. I also understand that if we do nothing, our entire species will be enslaved. At least this way we go down fighting. Other voices began to speak up around the chamber. I will serve as his second officer, declared Captain Park Ji-ho. My navigation skills could be useful. I volunteer for the engineering department, called out Commander Bei Jin-woo. Someone needs to keep that singularity contained. Within an hour, they had more volunteers than positions available. Every officer in the chamber wanted to serve aboard humanity's last hope, even knowing they would probably die in the attempt. General Choi selected the best candidates and assigned them to crash training on the new technology. You have 1 week to learn systems that took our scientists. The Indomitable dropped out of hyperspace at the edge of the new Kyoto system, her quantum engines humming quietly in the darkness. Commander Song Tai-ho stood on the bridge, staring at the view screen with barely controlled rage. What he saw there would haunt him for the rest of his life. Massive orbital stations hung around the captured human colony world like metal vultures. Through the ship's powerful sensors, he could see human prisoners being loaded into transport ships like cargo. Men, women, and children were separated into different groups, while Draktar guards watched with cruel amusement. Sir, I am reading. 67 Draktar vessels in the system, reported Lieutenant Han Mie from the tactical station. 3 dreadnoughts, 12 heavy cruisers, and the rest are escorts and transports. How many prisoners? Tai-ho asked quietly. Navigation officer. Ansora checked her sensors. Approximately 10,000 humans on the orbital stations. The planet below shows signs of heavy bombardment. Most of the cities are in ruins. Tai-ho closed his eyes for a moment, remembering the intelligence briefings about New Kyoto. It had been a peaceful agricultural world with a population of 2 million. Now most of those people were dead, and the survivors faced a life of slavery in Draktar mining colonies. Sir, they have detected us, announced Communications Officer Kang. Seojun, the enemy fleet is moving to intercept. Through the view screen, Tai-ho watched the Draktar ships turn toward them like a school of predatory fish sensing blood in the water. He had never felt so small and alone as he did in that moment, facing an enemy fleet that had never been defeated. All stations battle alert, he ordered. Chief Engineer Bei, bring the quantum shields online. Weapons Officer Lim, prepare the gravitational wave cannons for firing. Sir, Lim Daisung called from the weapons console. Are you sure about this? We have never tested these weapons in actual combat. Today we find out if 10 years of research was worth it, Tai-ho replied. Aegis, what is your tactical assessment? Though, ship's artificial intelligence spoke in a calm, pleasant voice that seemed strangely out of place in the tense atmosphere of the bridge. Analysis complete, Commander. Enemy vessels are using conventional plasma weapons and particle beam arrays. Their shield technology appears to be based on electromagnetic field manipulation. Probability of victory using standard human weapons, 0.001%. And with our new weapons? Insufficient data for accurate prediction. However, theoretical models suggest the gravitational wave cannons should be effective. Against conventional shielding, Tai-ho nodded grimly. Theoretical models. Their entire species was betting on theoretical models. The Draktar fleet approached in a standard attack formation, with the massive dreadnoughts in the center and smaller ships on the flanks. Tai-ho recognized the pattern from the intelligence reports. It was the same formation they had used to destroy every other fleet that opposed them. Incoming transmission from the enemy flagship, Kang Seojun reported. Put it through. The face of Wing Commander Vaktor appeared on the main screen. The Draktar officer was smaller than the massive Captain Li Huan, but his scarred features spoke of many battles and victories. His yellow eyes studied the human ship with amusement. "I am Wing Commander Vaktor of the Draktar Third Fleet. You will surrender your vessel immediately and prepare to be boarded. Your crew will be processed for slave assignments along with the other humans." "I am Commander Song Taiho of the human starship Indomitable. I have a different proposal, Wing Commander. Release all human prisoners and withdraw from this system immediately." Vaktor laughed, a harsh sound that filled the bridge. "One ship against 67? Human, your species is even more foolish than we thought. Very well. We will add your wreckage to the debris field as a lesson to others." The transmission ended and Taiho turned to his crew. "Everyone ready?" Chief Engineer Bei Jinwoo's voice came through the intercom from engineering. "Quantum shields are stable, sir. The singularity containment is holding steady. We are as ready as we will ever be. Then let us show the galaxy what humans can do. All weapons, fire at will." The battle began badly for the Indomitable. The Draktar fleet opened fire with a concentrated barrage that lit up space with deadly energy. Plasma bolts and particle beams struck the human ship from multiple directions, and for a moment Taiho thought they were all going to die in the first few seconds of combat. But then something amazing happened. The quantum phase shields shimmered around the ship like a soap bubble, and the Draktar weapons passed right through them as if the Indomitable was not even there. "Incredible," whispered Ansora. "The shields are shifting us partially out of normal space. The energy beams cannot touch us." "Sir, the shields are draining a lot of power," reported Bei Jinwoo. "We cannot maintain this for long. Maybe 10 minutes at full effectiveness." "Then we had better make those 10 minutes count," Taiho replied. "Lim, target the nearest cruiser with gravitational wave cannon 1. Weapons Officer Lim Daisung worked frantically at his console, trying to lock onto a target while the ship phased in and out of normal space. "Target acquired, sir. Gravitational wave cannon charged and ready. Fire." What happened next changed the course of galactic history. The gravitational wave cannon did not fire a beam of energy or a physical projectile. Instead, it sent out a pulse of twisted space-time that reached across the void at the speed of light. When it hit the Draktar cruiser, the massive warship simply came apart. There was no explosion, no burst of flame. The ship just disintegrated as its molecular bonds were torn apart by the gravitational waves. In seconds, a kilometer-long warship became a cloud of free-floating atoms drifting in space. The entire Draktar fleet stopped firing and stared at where their cruiser had been. In 3 centuries of conquest, they had never seen anything like this. Their ships were supposed to be invincible. Their shields were supposed to stop any weapon. But this lone human vessel had just destroyed one of their most powerful ships, as if it was made of paper. "Target the lead dreadnought," Taiho ordered, his voice steady despite the adrenaline coursing through his veins. The second gravitational wave pulse hit the massive Draktar flagship dead center. For a moment, nothing seemed to happen. Then cracks appeared along the ship's hull as the gravitational waves tore through its internal structure. The dreadnought broke in half with a silence that was somehow more terrifying than any explosion. "Wing." Commander Vaktor's final transmission was brief and filled with disbelief. "Impossible," he whispered, just before his command section drifted away from the rest of his dying ship. For the first time in centuries, Draktar forces experienced genuine fear. Ships that had conquered worlds and enslaved entire species suddenly found themselves helpless against technology they could not understand. Some tried to flee, but the Indomitable was faster. Some tried to fight, but their weapons could not touch the phasing human ship. "Sir, enemy fleet is scattering," reported Han Miai. "Several ships are attempting to jump to hyperspace." "Let them go," Taiho decided. "We came here for the prisoners, not to chase every enemy ship." The Indomitable moved toward the orbital processing stations, her weapons silencing the few Draktar ships that tried to stop her. Within hours, they had rescued over 10,000 human captives and destroyed the alien facilities. As they prepared to leave the system, Taiho ordered Communications Officer Kang Seojun to broadcast a message on all frequencies. "This is Commander Song Taiho of the human starship Indomitable. To all species listening to this transmission, know that the Draktar are not invincible. They can be beaten. They can be stopped. This is humanity's promise to the galaxy. We do not surrender, we do not kneel, and we are coming for every single one of you who has enslaved our people. The message spread across subspace communication networks, reaching every corner of the galaxy within days. On Veltar, the enslaved blue-skinned aliens heard it and dared to hope for the first time since their world fell. On Katani colony worlds, the feathered people whispered the human commander's words like a prayer. But nowhere was the message received with more shock than on the Draktar homeworld of Mordrath Prime. Emperor Zakthul stood in his throne room, his massive form trembling with rage as he watched the recording of his ships being destroyed. "How is this possible?" he roared at his assembled admirals. "Our technology is superior. Our fleets are invincible." Admiral Gorthak, the largest and most experienced of the Draktar military leaders, studied the tactical data with growing concern. "Sire, this human ship uses weapons we have never encountered. They appear to manipulate gravitational fields directly, bypassing conventional shielding entirely. Then develop countermeasures. Find a way to stop them. It will take time, my lord. This technology is completely alien to us. Our scientists estimate months or even years of research would be required." The Emperor's roar of fury echoed through the palace. For the first time in his long reign, the absolute ruler of the Draktar Empire felt afraid. If one human ship could do this much damage, what would happen when they built more of them deploy? "The extinction," he commanded. A shocked silence fell over the throne room. The extinction was the Empire's ultimate weapon, a moon-sized fortress capable of destroying entire planets. It had been used only 3 times in Draktar history, each time to make an example. News of the Indomitables' victories spread across the galaxy like wildfire. On the enslaved world of Veltar, a young engineer named Ko Jinho worked in the underground mines, his blue skin covered in the dust and grime of forced labor. He had been hiding among the common workers since his father, Elder Minho, was executed by the Draktar. When he heard the whispered stories about a human ship that could destroy Draktar vessels, Jinho felt something he had not experienced since his world fell. Hope. That night, he gathered his fellow slaves in the deepest tunnels where the Draktar surveillance devices could not reach. "The humans have done what we thought impossible," he told the assembled Veltari. "They have made the Draktar bleed. If one human ship can do this, imagine what we could accomplish if we all fought together." An older Veltari shook his head sadly. "The Draktar have too many guards, too many weapons. We are workers, not soldiers." "We are engineers," Jinho replied firmly. "We built the machines that mine these tunnels. We maintain the power systems that run this facility. We know exactly how to make it all stop working." Within days, carefully planned accidents began happening throughout the Draktar mining operations. Power generators mysteriously overloaded. Transport vehicles broke down in remote locations. Processing equipment suffered critical failures that took weeks to repair. The Draktar guards grew suspicious, but they could not prove sabotage. To them, all aliens looked alike, and they had never bothered to learn the individual faces of their slaves. They began executing random workers as examples. But this only made the resistance spread faster. Similar uprisings began on 17 other worlds as news of human victories reached enslaved populations. The Katani used their natural flying ability to attack Draktar installations from above. The crystal-based Zephyrians created resonance frequencies that shattered Draktar equipment. Even the peaceful Veltari were learning to fight back. On the Draktar homeworld of Mordrath Prime, Emperor Zakthul received these reports with growing fury. His Supreme Admiral, Gorthak, stood before the throne trying to explain how the most powerful empire in the galaxy was being challenged by escaped slaves and primitive humans. "The rebellions are spreading faster than we can contain them," Gorthak admitted. "Every world we reconquer rises up again within days. The aliens are no longer afraid of us." "Then make them afraid again," the Emperor roared. "Use whatever force is necessary. We are already executing thousands of rebels daily, my lord. But for every one we kill, 2 more take their place. The stories of this human ship have given them hope. and hope is a dangerous thing for slaves to possess. The Emperor rose from his throne, his massive form casting shadows across the chamber. Where is the extinction? Why has it not found and destroyed this human vessel? The ship is difficult to track, sire. It appears to use some form of advanced stealth technology. Our sensors lose contact whenever it jumps to hyperspace. Find it, the Emperor commanded. I do not care if you have to search every system in the galaxy. Find that ship and destroy it. Meanwhile, the Indomitable was conducting its most daring raid yet. The ship had jumped into the Grimhold system, where the Draktar maintained their primary military academy on a heavily fortified world. Commander Song Taiho stood on the bridge, studying the tactical display with his senior officers. Intelligence says they are training their next generation of ship commanders here, he explained. If we can disrupt their academy, it will set back their military expansion for years. Navigation Officer An Sora looked worried as she studied the sensor readings. Sir, they have over 200 defensive platforms around that planet, and I am reading at least 50 warships in orbital patrol. The quantum shield should protect us from their weapons, Chief Engineer Bei Jinwoo added through the intercom. But I need to warn you, the containment field is showing more stress fractures. We can probably manage one more major battle before the singularity becomes unstable. Taiho nodded grimly. He had known this moment would come eventually. The Indomitable was living on borrowed time, and every battle brought them closer to catastrophic failure. But they had come too far to stop now. Aegis, what is your tactical assessment? The AI's calm voice filled the bridge. Analysis complete, Commander. Direct assault on the Academy has a 12% chance of success. However, I have identified a weakness in their power grid. If we can overload the main generator, it will create a cascade failure that destroys most of the orbital defenses. How do we overload the generator? By ramming it with a gravitational wave pulse at close range. However, this would require the ship to enter the atmosphere and operate within the planet's gravity well. The strain on our systems would be extreme. Dr. Park Sun-hee, the ship's xenobiologist, looked up from her research station. Commander, before we attack, you should see what I found in the Academy's database. The Draktar have not just been enslaving species, they have been deliberately weakening them. She activated a holographic display that showed genetic analysis charts. They use biological weapons to reduce intelligence and physical strength in conquered populations. Each generation of slaves becomes more docile and easier to control. They are systematically destroying the evolutionary progress of entire species. The bridge fell silent as the crew absorbed this information. The Draktar were not just conquering worlds. They were committing genocide on a galactic scale, erasing the very essence of what made each species unique. There is more, Dr. Park continued. I found intelligence about their plans for Earth. They intend to use a bioweapon to sterilize 90% of the human population, keeping only enough survivors to serve as a slave workforce. Taiho felt his hands clench into fists. How long before they deploy this weapon? According to these files, the bioweapon will be ready within 6 months. They plan to launch it as soon as their main fleet reaches Earth. Then we stop them here, Taiho declared. All stations prepare for atmospheric entry. We are going to hit that generator with everything we have. The Indomitable dove toward the planet's surface like a falling star, her quantum shields shimmering as they deflected the desperate fire from Draktar defense platforms. The ship shook violently as she entered the atmosphere, her hull glowing red-hot from friction despite the advanced shielding. Generator target acquired, reported Weapons Officer Lim Daisung. Range 2,000 meters and closing. Sir, the containment field is fluctuating, called out Bei Jinwoo from engineering. I do not know how much more stress it can take. Just a few more seconds, Taiho replied. Fire when ready, Lim. The gravitational wave cannon discharged at point-blank range, sending a pulse of twisted space-time directly into the Academy's main power generator. The massive fusion reactor tried to contain the gravitational distortion for a few seconds, before exploding in a ball of nuclear fire that lit up the entire continent. The chain reaction spread through the power grid exactly as Aegis had predicted. Orbital defense platforms went dark one by one as their power supplies failed. Dractar warships found themselves blind and helpless as their sensor arrays shut down. But the victory came at a terrible cost. The stress of atmospheric combat had pushed the Indomitable's systems beyond their limits. Chief Engineer Bei Jinwu's voice came through the intercom, weak and strained. "Sir, containment breach in Engineering Section 7. I am sealing the area, but the singularity is becoming unstable. We have maybe hours before total failure." "Jinwu, get out of there." Taeho ordered. "Cannot do that, sir. Someone needs to monitor the containment manually. If I leave, the whole ship goes up in minutes instead of hours." Through the internal cameras, Taeho could see his chief engineer working frantically at the containment controls, radiation burns, covering his face and hands. Bei Jinwu had always been the quiet one among the crew, but his dedication to duty was absolute. "Sir," Bei's voice was getting weaker, "I need to tell you something. The Academy's database contained the location of the Dractar homeworld and something else. Their emperor is not just a military leader. He is a religious figure. The Dractar believe he is divinely chosen to rule the galaxy. If we could somehow defeat him in single combat, it might break their entire empire." "Jinwu, stay with us," Taeho called out, but there was no response from engineering. Combat medic Lee So-yun checked her readings and shook her head sadly. "He is gone, sir, but he managed to stabilize the containment field before the end. We have maybe 12 hours before the singularity breaks free." As the Indomitable limped away from the burning Dractar Academy, she received an unexpected transmission on an encrypted frequency. The voice that came through the speakers was not human. It belonged to Ko Jinho, speaking from his hiding place in the Veltari mine's human ship. "This is the Veltari resistance. We have been monitoring your victories, and we want to help. Representatives from 17 different species are gathering in the Sigma Draconis system. We call ourselves the Liberation Alliance, and we are ready to fight alongside." Yuan Sora plotted a course to the rendezvous point while Taeho considered their options. The Indomitable was dying. Her singularity containment would fail within hours, and they had no way to repair the damage. But they had accomplished something incredible. They had inspired a galactic rebellion. The Liberation Alliance fleet gathered in the empty space of the Sigma Draconis system, like a collection of broken toys waiting to challenge the gods themselves. Ships from 17 different species floated together in loose formation. Veltari, engineering vessels retrofitted with quantum torpedoes, sleek Ketani fighters that could dance between laser beams, and dozens of other craft held together by hope and desperation. Commander Song Taeho stood on the bridge of the dying Indomitable, watching the ragtag fleet assemble around his ship. They looked so small and fragile compared to the Dractar armadas he had faced. Most of these vessels were converted cargo haulers or mining ships, armed with whatever weapons their crews could cobble together. "Sir, we are receiving a transmission from the Alliance flagship," reported Communications Officer Kang Seojun. The main screen flickered to life, showing the face of Ko Jinho. The young Veltari engineer had somehow escaped the slave mines and taken command of a converted transport ship called Freedom's Hope. His blue skin was scarred from years of forced labor, but his large eyes burned with determination. "Commander Taeho, it is an honor to finally meet you. Your victories have given hope to every enslaved being in the galaxy." "The honor is mine, Jinho," Taeho replied. "But I must warn you, our ship is dying. The containment field around our power source will fail within hours. When it does, the explosion will destroy everything within several light years." Jinho nodded grimly. "We know the risks, Commander. We also know this may be our only chance to strike at the heart of the Dractar Empire. Our scouts have confirmed that Emperor Zakthul has recalled most of his fleets to defend the homeworld. Mordrath Prime is protected by over 500 warships. 500 against... How many do we have?" 73 ships, Jinho admitted. "Most of them are barely armed. But we have something the Dractar do not expect. We are fighting for our freedom, not for conquest." Before Taeho could respond, proximity alarms began screaming throughout the Indomitable. Lieutenant Han Miai looked up from her tactical station, her face pale with shock. "Sir, massive contact dropping out of hyperspace. Distance, 50,000. Kilometers and closing. The extinction emerged from the void like a nightmare made real. The moon-sized weapons platform dwarfed every other ship in the system, its surface covered with thousands of gun batteries and missile tubes. At its heart sat Emperor Zakthul himself, commanding from the bridge of his ultimate weapon. "This is Emperor Zakthul of the Draktar Empire." His voice boomed across all frequencies. "You pathetic insects have caused enough trouble. Surrender immediately, and I will grant you quick deaths instead of the slow torture you deserve." Taiho looked around his bridge at the faces of his crew. Navigation Officer An Sora sat ready at her controls, even though she knew they were all about to die. Weapons Officer Lim Daisung checked his targeting systems one final time. Combat Medic Lee Soyun stood at her station, prepared to help the wounded even in the face of certain defeat. "Open a channel to all ships," Taiho ordered. Kang Seojin nodded. "Channel open, sir." "This is Commander Song Taiho to all Alliance vessels. Today we face the ultimate test of our resolve. The enemy has brought their most powerful weapon to destroy us, but they have made one critical error. They think this is about military superiority. They think this is about who has the biggest guns or the strongest shields. But they are wrong." He paused, watching the extinction continue its approach like a mobile planet of death. "This is about freedom. This is about the right of every being in the galaxy to live without fear. This is about standing up to bullies who think might makes right. They have enslaved our worlds, murdered our families, and tried to break our spirits. But we are still here. We are still fighting. And today, we show them that some things are worth dying for." The Alliance fleet began to move, forming a protective formation around the Indomitable. The odds were impossible. 73 small ships against a weapon that could destroy planets. But not one vessel turned away. The battle began with the extinction unleashing its full arsenal. Beams of energy that could boil oceans lanced out across space, vaporizing Alliance ships in single shots. The smaller vessels responded with everything they had, but their weapons barely scratched the massive platform's armored hull. "Sir, we have lost 12 ships in the first exchange," reported Hanmie. "The enemy weapon is too powerful. Our fleet cannot damage it." Taiho watched his allies die and felt a cold fury building in his chest. These brave beings had come here knowing they would probably die, but they had come anyway. They deserved better than to be slaughtered by a weapon they could not even touch. "Aegis, analyze the extinction structure. Find me a weakness." The AI's voice remained calm despite the chaos around them. "Analysis complete, Commander. The platform's primary weapon draws power from a central reactor located at its core. If that reactor could be destabilized, it would cause a chain reaction, destroying the entire structure. How do we reach the reactor? The only access is through a thermal exhaust port approximately 2 meters wide. However, reaching it would require a direct approach through the platform's heaviest defenses." Taiho smiled grimly. "Aegis, can our gravitational wave cannons destabilize that reactor?" "Affirmative. However, the cannon would need to be fired from point-blank range. The ship would have to enter the exhaust port itself." "And our singularity, containment?" Chief Science Officer Dr. Yu Yunbi spoke up from her station. "Sir, if we destabilize our own singularity near their reactor, the resulting gravitational cascade would destroy both ships instantly, but the explosion would be large, enough to cripple their entire weapon." Taiho nodded slowly. He had always known this mission would end in sacrifice. Now the only question was whether that sacrifice would mean something. "All Alliance ships, this is the Indomitable. We are beginning our final attack run. Continue, engaging the enemy platforms to draw their fire away from us." The dying human ship turned toward the extinction and accelerated at maximum speed. The massive platform's guns tracked them, but the Alliance fleet threw itself into a desperate attack that forced the Draktar gunners to divide their attention. Ko Jinho's voice came through the communication system as his ship exploded under concentrated fire. "For my father. For freedom." His sacrifice bought the Indomitable precious seconds to close the distance. Through the chaos of battle, a new voice joined the communication network. Sergeant Oh Byung-hoon led a team of Alliance Commandos who had somehow managed to board the Extinction in a suicidal assault. "Commander, we have disabled their primary shield generator. You have a clear path to the exhaust port." The Indomitable dove toward the massive platform like a dart aimed at the heart of tyranny. Emperor Zakthul's roar of rage echoed across the communication channels as he realized what the humans were attempting. "Stop them. All weapons, concentrate fire on that ship." But it was too late. The Indomitable entered the thermal exhaust port, her quantum shields barely protecting her from the intense heat and radiation. At the end of the tunnel lay the Extinction's main reactor, a sphere of contained energy the size of a small moon. "Sir, singularity containment is at critical levels," warned Dr. Yu. "We have maybe 30 seconds before it breaks free." "Then let us make those 30 seconds count," Teho replied. "All power to the gravitational wave cannons. Lim, prepare to fire." "On my mark." "Sir, we will not survive the blast," Ansora pointed out quietly. "I know," Taiho said, "but our sacrifice will free billions of beings across the galaxy. That is worth any price." The Indomitable emerged into the reactor chamber and faced the burning heart of the Draktar Empire's ultimate weapon. For a moment, the small human ship hung in space before the massive energy sphere like a single candle confronting the sun. "For humanity," Taiho whispered. "For freedom. For every being who dreams of a better tomorrow." Fire. The gravitational wave cannon discharged directly into the reactor core, just as the Indomitable's own singularity broke free from containment. The two forces met in a cataclysm that tore apart the very fabric of space-time. The Extinction shuddered, as gravitational waves ripped through its structure from the inside out. Emperor Zakthul had just enough time to scream in disbelief before his ultimate weapon tore itself apart in a cascade of collapsing matter and twisted space. The explosion was visible from 3 star systems away, as the moon-sized platform collapsed into a brief but brilliant new star. When the light faded, both the Extinction and the Indomitable were gone. But across the galaxy, something extraordinary began to happen. The Draktar fleets, hearing that their divine emperor was dead, began to surrender or flee. Without their religious leader, the empire that had terrorized the galaxy for centuries simply collapsed. 1 year later, representatives from dozens of liberated worlds gathered at Memorial Station, built in the empty space where the final battle had taken place. A statue of Commander Song Teho and his crew stood at the center of the structure, surrounded by the names of every being who had died fighting for freedom. Admiral Ansora, the sole survivor of the Indomitable, who had escaped in a damaged life pod, addressed the assembled delegates as they prepared to sign the Galactic Freedom Charter. "Today we establish a new order in the galaxy," she announced, "not based on fear and conquest, but